Hello everyone, today I'll be ranking the 7 stars units in FFBE. Now there isn't much going on in the game right now, and I've seen some of the other content creators do it like Howl and Sins, so I thought of doing one of my own. So I'll be splitting the units into two categories. One is DPS and the others are support units, which is the other roles breakers, tanks, healers and buffers. So I'll be starting with the support units first. The way I'll be ranking this tier list is based on how much you can offer on the team and how slot efficient it can be, since that's a recurring theme in today's trials. First is going to be 2B. I put her in good enough. She's quite decent to rank as a breaker. She has a cooldown of 70% and the LB 74% full AoE full break. But besides that, she doesn't do much besides being a DPS. So she's just her damage isn't even that quite up in the top tier anymore. So I'm just putting good enough. Next is Ace. He is a bit meh in today's standards. He has his cooldown that summons and summons Eidolon, which fills up the Esper gauge. And he also has some defense, spirit, and mitigation buffs, but that's RNG reliant. And in today's fights, we don't really. You would want some on-demand buffs to survive against a fight, so he's just outdated to today's standards. Next is AIKD. I'm gonna put her in the top tier. Not to be biased because I pulled for her, it's because of how much role she can be. She's a jack of all trades. She can become a damage dealer, a magic or physical cover tank, a breaker, or even a healer. Now her healer portion is quite basic. She only has Kuraja and Re-Raise, but she can become a magic cover and physical cover tank really well, and also on-demand break by 70%, which makes her so efficient if you wanna bring a cover tank and breaker in just one role. So you can slot in another support unit if you want on a DPS, so that's why she belongs to the top tier. Next is Ayaka. She's okay-ish to bring in today's fights. She's only good if you bring someone else who can do what she can, which is ailments resist and break resist. She's like a basic white mage. She can only use a Kuraja, Re-Raise, and Cure the same ailments but not perfect them, so she just belongs in the okayish tier. Oron, I would put him in the okayish tier as well. No, I think Akman is good enough. You can even still use him in today's trials and even be efficient. Oron is really good because of his turn 1. He can buff everyone's stats and also break, which makes him really good if if the buffer you're bringing, like for example, I guess someone who has a ramped up like Seaside Nicole, whose best buffs is in his LB, so you can use him to buff turn 1 and break at the same turn. He can also chain with the AT family and bring some imperils along, but his damage isn't really that noticeable to the standard, so he's just a breaker in most situations. Next is Aloha Laswell. I'm gonna put in the superb role because of how easy you can reach 100% dodge with him, with his TMR also giving him 20% dodge. I will put him in top tier, but because he is best used as a provoker, and if you want to use him as a cover tank, you need to bring 2 of him because it's on because the cover AoE cover is on the cooldown ability, so you don't really it doesn't really shine well if you're bringing only 1 of him. If you want to use him to just be a provoke and cover tank. Next is Bosch. He is superb above of Laswell. He's still pretty good, pretty decent to use. He can cover magic and physical, and also break and buffs a bit. He have his own self re-raise so that your healers doesn't have to re-raise him. But compared to AIKD, she can do her breaks and cover at the same turn, while Bosch needs someone to break on turn 1. So if you need someone to break turn 1 and cover and tank at the same time, AIKD is still better. And next is going to be Beatrix. She's okay-ish. I've used her in a few trials in Lich and the Scorn of the Octopus and the Teacher, but she fell out in today's standard because she doesn't have a really good turn 1 imperil or break, so you need someone else to do it. For example, like Sylvie, she her breaks, her buffs actually has some breaks in it. So if she needs someone to break on turn 1, then she can't really be used into the she's not really that good to be bring in the harder trials. Next is King Edgar. He is really superb. That his breaks is 84% in his LB. It only lasts for 2 turns when you bring his health below 20%, but with the amount of units that can fill LB into in today's standard, you can pretty much use it almost on demand. So he is just in the superb tier. Next is Barbaria. As a damage dealer, she's also outdated. As a support, I've used her once for the Octopus and Teacher trial. It's because of her 120% Thunder and Wind in Peril, which is really great in my 3-turn KO strats. But as a supporting overall, she's pretty outdated. Beowulf, her name is good enough. He has really weird breaks. Some of his breaks are lower than the others, and his LB is only single target, and some fights will need AoE, so he's just good enough. Echo is okayish as a white mage. She lacks some of the other abilities that the healers have today, like Ayaka's problem. She doesn't have any ailments resist or break resist. Emperor Shara is just meh as well. He has his own imbue to others. His damage isn't that good. His buffs isn't even that decent to today's standards. Ignis is okay, and he has the same problem as some of the ones in the okayish tier, which is he needs someone else to help him buff in turn 1. He has a really good cooldown attack, magic, spirit, and defense buff, but he doesn't have mitigation that he can dual cast, so you need someone else to do that mitigation on turn 1, which makes it not viable in today's fight. Alfheim also pretty meh. As a bard, she is really bad since you need supports to be using actions every turn depending on the situation, and she's locked to singing until her enhancements which makes her really good. Elfrida is also meh. I don't need to explain why. Bard, I was gonna put him good enough, but since we got Sylvie on global, I'm gonna put in the okayish tier. He was really good on the Japanese side because he's the only few units who can imbue. But since we got Sylvie who can dual cast and imbue, so you can target more than one, he fell into the okayish tier. Gladiolus, he is good enough as a cover tank. He doesn't have provoke, so you can't use him as a provoke tank. Besides having to put Golem and Mughal plushie on, but since you'd want Mughal plushie or any other innate draw items you have, but that makes his stats fell below some of the other tanks who has innate provoke. So he's only good enough to be as your as your cover and single target tank. The leader, meh. Don't need any explanation. Awakened Rain is superb as to being a tank, especially after his enhancements. Besides, his enhancements is almost to himself, but one of the glegs that he got is his escort leader, which fills everyone's LB by 4 to 6, which is really good in some of the situations, especially paired up with Edgar, who will need his LB up every 2 turns or every 1 turn if the boss fails himself. Okay, and then next is Lid. She is going to be in the good enough, along with the other breakers, that she only breaks and she doesn't bring anything else to the table. Aerith is superb. She's a really good healer along with Folka and Lotus Mage Fina. All 3 of these have the same tier. I would if I would put them side by side, because they all have really good healing abilities that supports team, but they lack some of the things that the other one covers. For example, Folka has ailments resist and break resist and stop and charm, but she doesn't have any AoE re-raise or any AoE raise for a team. Aerith has general mitigation, can buffs and also mitigate some damage, but she doesn't have any ailments resist. Lotus Mage Fina, she's really good at AoE re-raising and some defense and spirit and ailments buff, but she doesn't cover ailments resist. So all of these 3 has their own strengths and weaknesses, which put them all in the same tier. Next is Barrel. I'm gonna put him in the good enough section. He is a really he's a true definition of being a hybrid unit, of being a magic DPS and also a magic cover tank. He has some um, innate dodge to make him a provoke tank, but he doesn't really excel as much as the other tanks to make him he's good enough to bring in some trials, but not good in the individual roles that he covers. Next is Chow. He is good, superb, but in the way back, he can tank and also heal and also dispel Ga. But if that's the roles that your healers are gonna do anyway, and he can't really be a healer and tank at the same time since he can only do one at a time. Next is Dark Fina. I'm gonna put her in the okayish tier. She's almost in the meh tier, but because of her elemental resist and that she can imperil dark by 120%, she is pretty okay to be used in today's fights. Demon Rain, I'm gonna put him in the good enough tier. Uh, he's the only tank I have in my team that can be built really tanky. But besides that, he can only become a cover and provoke tank. He has an initial role of buffing earth and fire resist, but and also give some man eater buffs every 5 turn, but that's a pretty niche role, so he's not really in the superb tier. Citra, I want to put him in the okay tier because she can deal some damage even though she's evil, but I'm ultimately going to put her in meh because she takes a lot to enhance, and you might as well bring some of the other more recent units to bring as your support unit rather than enhancing Citra unless you really like her or something. Uh, Next is Flammy. I'm gonna put him in the good enough. He can become a damage dealer, a jumper, and also become your buffer, but he can only do those like at one at a time. And his buffing abilities is LB, which you're going to need someone to help you feel the LB Unchained, which I'm putting in the good enough section. Krilla, I'm gonna put her in the top tier because of how much she can do. If you pair her with someone like Rivera, with her innate dodge, she can become your provoke or cover tank. And if disregarding that, she's a really good breaker that she can dispel allies or enemies individually. She can dispel any buffs on her cooldown. She can chain all the elements, so you can bring her. She's really good for story, and also she imperils all of them. So if you're bringing someone who doesn't have imperil like Sora or a finisher like Sid, she can just bring her to imperil any element, so that she's really slot efficient. Next is Lilith. I think she's good enough. Her damage isn't was even really that good to be brought as a damage dealer during release, and her only really good use is to be an arena troll. So yeah, she's just good enough. Grimlaw Sakura, I'm gonna put her in the superb role. It's because of how much she can. Her buffing abilities is really interesting. She can actually become your. Um, no, I don't think. Her buffs isn't that high. You need to put her in the good enough tier that she can become your mage and also buffer. Ignacio also good enough. His problem, he doesn't have any turn 1 buffs um, except from outside help. So he's just good enough if you bring someone like Malphasy who can fill an LB. He's pretty decent. He has 180% defense spirit and an attack and magic buff, which you can use in a slot efficient team as a buffer and finisher. But since he needs external help, I'm putting him in a good enough tier. Immortal Flame Katie, she is meh. She's pretty weak. Her breaks is only about 60% or 55%, and her buffs is only like 100%. Even though she can fill in multiple roles, the numbers makes her not that relevant. Same goes for Jiraiya. He has some pretty niche roles like giving A1 AoE Mirage and also some elemental resist for the Dark Espestral, but it's not really viable in today's fights. Same goes for Lunera and Noctis. They're pretty outdated. Next, I'm gonna put him in okay chair, but way at the back, really because of his role to sacrifice himself for some of the turn 1 KO strats, which I always do, especially for my raid team to reach the damage cap. So he barely made out of the meh category just because of that one thing that he does, which makes some of the strategies um, in some fights viable. Next is Radiant Lightning. She's not a really top tier damage healer, but as a breaker, she is good enough, but way at the back. Her breaks are only 60 to 70%, and since she can become a damage healer as well, so but as a breaker she's only good enough. Series Darkfina, she's the same category as Darkfina. Um, Sukiko, I'm gonna put her in superb as a breaker. Her breaks is really high, 75%, and she can keep it up on demand if you bring two. Since she's also a mage, you're gonna be bringing two over anyway. So she is ranked pretty high as a breaker in the superb role. Uh, Dark Veritas also meh, outdated. Same goes for um, Veritas with Flame and also Victor. Let's go from the top here. Lauren, she is okay. She is good enough. But she falls behind Oron. Yeah, all because she just breaks and fill up LB, which does less compared to these two. Lovely Katie, I'll put her in the okayish tier. She's actually quite decent as a white mage. She's like almost Ayaka level tier, and she does some things that Ayaka can't. For example, she can provide AoE re-raise on one of a cooldown, and also prevent break and give break resist. So her stats is pretty low since I know she's a free unit, so I can't understand why, but she is pretty okay to be used in today's fights. Makina, he's good enough. He's just a support damage dealer breaker, so he falls. He's better at slightly better at breaking than lightning, because of his LB, which breaks by 79%. Marie, I'm gonna put in the okayish tier. She's not really used in today's fight because of the other healers already does what she can and more, but she's pretty okay to be used in some of the elemental Tetris fight. Nicole, after his enhancements, he is pretty superb as a buffer. He's one of the long lasting buffer um, that's still top tier even in today's standards. Marky De Leon, she's pretty meh. Merc Ramza, he's almost okayish tier because of his low stats. To be bringing trials, I'm gonna put him in good enough at the way back. Mira is top tier that she can. When I say these three doesn't have um when I say these three have pros and weaknesses, Mira doesn't have much weaknesses besides some of the other ailments resist that she doesn't cover, and also stop resist. But besides that, she can heal and buff your team really effectively, that you can just bring her to being your healer and buffer. That Because of that, she in my opinion beats both of these three. Hope, he I want to put it in the superb role. I'm gonna put it in a really high good enough. No, I think he's pretty superb. He is just a slightly worse Nicole, due to the fact that Hope, his buffs, he has a really strong turn 1 buff that can't be dispelled, but his other buffs are single target. No, not single target, they're individual buffs. You can only buffs defense, defense spirit, attack and magic individually, which you would want them to at least be able to buff defense and spirit in one, also with mitigation. But because of that, he just fall really behind Nicole. Olberich, he is a pretty good tank, I would say. He's sort of like a physical version of CG Charlotte, that he covers physical. His LB also covers physical, and also put up some mitigation, slightly lower than Charlotte, but he can be used for any of the buffers that you want, like Hope. Paired with Hope, like you can try to buff up defensive spirit and then use all break to for the mitigation. So that's one thing you can do. Primrose, she would be top tier if not for Sylvie. I'm just for in the superb role. Primrose buffs really high. Her LB buffs 200%. Also gives some HP in MP regen and also feel everyone except hers LB gauge. But because she's such a basic buffer, because that's all she does, she gives some mitigation. She buffs stats really high and gives some dark imbue and dark resist. But since most of the other damage dealers have their own attack and magic buffs anyway on your own kit. Mostly they're around 200 to 150%. You don't really have um, you don't really need to pull for Primrose when her banner was live, but she's still pretty good to be used in fights for the high defense and spirit buff that she does. Uh, Prompto, I would say he is good enough breaker and imperil and support chainer. His numbers isn't really that high compared to the other breakers and imperil, but he is good enough to bring if you don't have anyone else. Ramza, Living Water, pretty outdated. Ram is okay tier. Due to the fact that she can restore MP to everyone, and she can fill up the Esper gauge. So she has some niche use that she has over Ace, Misha in your cage tier. Rena, I would say she's good enough. She's kind of outdated into these standards. Rivera, you all know I use Rivera in almost all of my trial fights. In my personal opinion, in my unbiased opinion, if I were to be biased, I would put her in the top tier. But I would think she's just a superb unit. Um, you all know that whenever I use Rivera, I use teams that people think is not possible, but because Rivera is in there, you can do the fights using really weird strategies that would seem impossible if she doesn't exist. So because of that, that's sort of a niche role to fill. She isn't really a must-have unit, but because she I would say she's a very fun unit to have if you don't want to clear the fights in in a typical team of a breaker tanker 2 DPS. Rivera makes fights really fun to bring. Like I would pair her up with Sylvie and she would become my buffer and tank, and then I would be bring like all finishers or something. So she's really good that for making teams like impossible possible. So that's why I put in superb here. Roy, meh, don't bother. Seaside Nicole, he let's see, he just got his enhancements, but because he can only his double cast doesn't really um he can't really double cast his abilities properly, so I don't really want to put her in the superb role. She's just a good enough buffer. You can use him in fights, but um, his enhancements really wasn't really that great, just because that he doesn't really get any on-demand that we cast to all of his abilities, so he's just a good enough buffer. Sighart is a top tier tank. He can be built really tanky. He can give some mitigation to everyone using his LB. He can also break and also become your side chainer and also and imperils earth and give some earth resist, and he can do all of that while still being a really good tank, so he deserves to be in the top tier. Summer, Fina, and Lit, I will put them, they were I think I wanted to put them in the really high super tier, but I'm gonna put them in the really low top tier. Their breaks are really good. They can give some chaining abilities to anyone, so that if you're being a finisher, Summer, Fina, and Lit can give others chain so that they can chain. And then they can also imperil and break and also heal. They do a lot of things, but for their breaks, they need to use a cooldown, and besides that, they need to rely on the LB. So they're not really top tier. I don't think they can beat Krilla in the breaker category. Okay, next is Summon Folka and Citra. I'm gonna put them in the really low superb tier, um, because they can be built really high defense, really high spirit. That's because their evo damage is based on spirit, so they can still heal a lot. They can give some um, ailments resist and stop and charm like the original Folka does, and also some niche I think demon and undead killer buffs, which is quite niche, but if there's a trial which you need, they'll be pretty good at giving those. Sylvie, hands down, number one top tier support unit. She has really high stats, really high evasion. She can give chain to others, imbue to others. She can turn one, break and buff really properly. Because of her complete slot efficiency, she is the number one. She's still the number one support unit on global right now. Lena, she's just ranked above these three healers. She's really good. She covers a bit of Volca, a bit of Aerith, a bit of Fina, which makes her no, I think I'm just gonna put in the top tier since she beats all three of them in their weaknesses somewhat. White Knight Noel, he is a superb tank. Um, the reason why he is considered superb because he can build really tanky and that he has his own physical and magical mitigation, which you would need some external help for that if you're using other units like Pot 153 and you need to bring specific units like Eurasia, for example, who has defend physical and magical mitigation. So he is a really good provoker and magic cover tank that can self-sustain his own defense and magical and physical mitigation. Wilhelm, I would say he's a good enough tank. He is I think, yeah, he's just if you don't have any other tanks to bring, you can still bring Wilhelm to bring for the tougher trials, but you're going to be needing a lot more gear compared to the other recent tanks that we have. Yuna, she's an okayish healer. She's like a mix between a red a white mage and a green mage. She has re-raise. She can cover some of the elements, but those niche roles only covers half of what's needed in today's fight. So she's just an okay tier. Eurasia, she's really good. She's still a really good basic buffer. She has some I think she has demon and beast killer buffs which you can use in some fights, and she is pretty decent to bring in fights. There are some other buffers better than her, like Primrose, but you can still use her in tough trials. Uh, Chin, yeah, I don't want to comment. He's just really bad. And lastly, Zargabuff. I'm gonna put him in a superb tier. Uh, a really slightly low superb tier due to because of his LB costing a lot, 45, and also it only lasts for 2 turns, and his on-demand buffs isn't really that good, so he's just superb just because his LB gives 50% mitigation. No, I think he's pretty outdated now. I'm gonna put him behind Eurasia then. So that's my tier list for the support roles, and I think this video has gone too long. I'll be making a part 2 for the ranking of the DPS units. So I hope you guys enjoy my criticism on this tier list. This is based on my opinion and my unbiased. Uh, I tried to be as unbiased as I can for this list, and I'm pretty sure I rank all of these units fairly. And I hope to see you guys on my part 2, which is for the DPS units.